Alan here, the Urban Arcade, and this is my Street Fighter 2 Definitive Edition video, or the game I thought was the definitive version, because there's so many versions of Street Fighter, and I'm talking about the arcade ports that we got, not the home console releases from back in the day. Now, originally I played it in the arcades, but then I got it on the Super Nintendo, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and to me that was the arcade version at the time, but I knew it wasn't. I could see all the differences, and I always wanted to own a copy of Street Fighter 2, that or an arcade cabinet. Now you couldn't fool me, no matter what version of Street Fighter 2 I did play in the early 90s, I could see it was a home port. It wasn't the arcade version, no matter what, even if I played it on the Amiga, an apparent better version than the Sega Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo versions of the game. So I always started to wonder, would we ever get an arcade version that we could play in our homes? Game consoles started getting a lot more powerful, emulating arcades, I guess, like with Mortal Kombat Trilogy. What was next? Even with the PlayStation 1 being out and playing 3D games, I still wanted an old Street Fighter 2 game. An arcade port, if anything. Mortal Kombat Trilogy did it, why not this? Now, in no particular order, the first game I got was Street Fighter Collection 2 for the PlayStation 1. Now, I remember hearing about this in magazines saying this is the perfect arcade version of the game. It plays exactly like it did in the arcade. It has some special features, and it has Street Fighter 2, Champion Edition, and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Well, they always called it Hyper Street Fighter 2. Okay, that's what it was originally called. In Japan, it was Street Fighter 2, and on the SNES, that's what I had. So, Street Fighter 2 Turbo for me. Thank you very much. Now, I really like this intro. You see everything coming together, all the games, to build up to this Street Fighter Collection 2. Yeah, there's Street Fighter Collection 1, but we'll get on to that. I remember sitting there, it was really cold outside, and it always was sort of cold and winter whenever I'd play a Street Fighter game. You'd have your collection title select screen so you could select which one you wanted, World Warrior, Champion Edition or Hyper Fighting. And then something hit that I completely forgot about, loading screens. Yeah, Mortal Kombat Trilogy had it, but yeah, it's PlayStation, it likes to load, it's on a disc. And I thought, wow, this looks nice, it looks authentic. It feels like the arcade. Oh look, I'm playing Ryu. This is good, it looks very clean. Oh, another loading screen. Yeah, it's quite long as well. It's not a short 2-second loading screen. It can last up to 12 seconds. And say what you want, that really throws the game out and breaks it up. But did it feel like I was playing an arcade version of the game? Yep, it did. Considering I played the SNES and I always noticed the differences between the SNES and the arcade version, this did. Although now I'm a bit wiser, and I think there's a little slight sound delay on this. And a few delays on certain movements, or maybe missing frames, I'm not sure, but I notice it now. And there's a gallery on this. You unlock artwork, oh, and that is incredible, and tips, secrets, and the cast. But what I'm talking about is looking at the pictures of Street Fighter, something I was obsessed with as a kid. I always liked to see the art, because this game was essentially anime drawn characters in a fighting game, and that was incredible. When I weren't playing a game, I was looking at screenshots or pictures in magazines, pictures such as these. Just like the Street Fighter sticker books that came out in the early 90s, packed full of artwork. Yep, the Street Fighter 2 and the Super Street Fighter 2 sticker albums. I loved them. I used to look through them all day. But the Expert Player's Handbook, this was a Street Fighter Bible at the time. I learned all the moves from this little thing here. And mainly I would look through this, looking at all the tips, and I would look at the art section at the back, and I would draw and try and replicate some of this artwork that was in it. It was incredible. It's so nice to have something with all these images in it. But with this Street Fighter collection, again, like I said, I could notice the differences. Like when Ryu walked backwards. He had this defensive backwalk, something that was taken out of the console versions. I guess it was removing frames to cut on memory, but look at this. I always notice that straight away in the arcades. Blanka does it too, when he hides his face. Now if that's the home port of the game, he walks forward and backwards exactly the same way, and I noticed that straight away when I was a kid. And well, shortly after that I got Street Fighter Collection for the PlayStation 1. This was harder to find, and yes, this came out before Street Fighter Collection 2. Then this game came with Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and Street Fighter Alpha 2 Dash, or Alpha 2 Gold, as it's named on the Alpha Anthology Collection, which I think is a superior version, so get that if you want to. Yeah, Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Oh, and I just want to say something. If you're ever looking at picking this game up, be prepared to put down some real hard cash on this thing. I mean, it's the most expensive game I've ever paid money on, especially for a retro game. On the PlayStation 1 it is, but if you do want it in your collection, yeah, I'd say pick it up. I mainly got it for basis of this video, so I guess it's worth it. Oh, and can you see how beautiful that is? Can you see it? Can you see how long the loading is? Yeah, this one, I've got to say, it feels like it has longer loading times and more of them. Although it has essentially arcade perfect versions of Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the loadings are horrendous. But I'm not going to grumble too much. I do love how accurate these games feel and how nice they feel. They feel like I'm playing the arcade versions. I was satisfied. I finally thought, here I am. I've got them. I've got arcade machines in my house. I take the disc out, put it away, I can take them with me. The loading is bad, sure. It really breaks up the momentum of what Street Fighter is. I mean, it's not like it's a short loading screen as well, but having these arcade games made up for that. It's something I always wanted and I finally have, on the PlayStation 1. And I never thought anything would happen after that. I didn't think that we'd get any better ports. I didn't think we'd get an arcade perfect collection again. I thought this was it. They're not going to make this again. I mean, as it is, arcade was slowly dying at this point. The PS2 was around the corner, and no one really cared about the arcade games anymore. No one except me, and maybe a few others that I just didn't know. It loaded before matches and after matches. I remember playing it with some friends, and they were like, I don't remember this when we were kids. What is this? Is this right? And I was like, no, don't worry about that. We're playing the arcade versions. And they were like, did it load at the arcade? I was like, yeah, it did. You know when you're sort of trying to defend it because you really love what you own. And I do. I'm not trying to knock them, but yeah, the loading was a bit much. And then with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, a game I didn't really like that much. The reason I didn't really like it is because every version I played was too difficult. I played it one time on an arcade machine in Brighton and I couldn't beat anyone on it. It had that input read crap on it, like Mortal Kombat 2 upwards had. You know, where the second you press a button it would know what you were going to do. But this version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, I believe, is the Japanese version, so it's a bit more forgiving, a bit more easier. Not by much, so it's still quite difficult. And can you believe that? A Street Fighter game toned down and made easier for Japanese people. Normally it's the other way around. And I couldn't develop that level of charm I had for the other games, because this was never released on like the Super Nintendo or the Sega Mega Drive. Oh, and it's probably one of the first shout-outs I've ever done, but shout out to Derek Moore. I mean, if you've noticed these little side borders I've been using for quite a few of my videos, he makes them. He makes them to put in your arcade emulator, to play it without them black borders. In other ways, so you don't have to stretch the image and make it look crap. When it comes to bezel art, making your videos look amazing and making your arcade games play amazing, he is second to none. He is truly amazing. I asked him if he would make me some and he did. He delivered. He won't let you down, so if you hit him up, maybe he'll help you do it, but his tutorials are incredible because I had no clue how to do this stuff. So Derek, thank you very much, and let's just hope you find that version of Karate Champ you're chasing. It's a passion of yours. Again, the same with what I have here. It's a passion, finding all these different versions and playing them and owning them. So good luck with that, mate. And again, thank you very, very much. The original home ports of Street Fighter 2 World Warrior and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. They never get boring for me, and they never age. They're timeless classics that I'll always play and own. Will we get an arcade version of the game that's perfect in every way? Let's have a look at Capcom Classic Collections for the PlayStation 2. Yeah, we're on a new generation of consoles. We've got the PlayStation 2, there'll be no loading screens on this. We've got Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, Champion Edition, and Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting Turbo. So, what can we expect from this? Oh, it looks perfect so far. It has that feel to it, it has that arcade feel to it. I like it, I'm loving it, I'm feeling it. Oh yeah. So far it just seems like Street Fighter Collection, but just put on a PS2. Who knows, let's have a look. Well, there's some bonus features on the main menu. You can select training on this, versus if you've got a second controller so you can play it with friends. It's an arcade version of the game. It doesn't say insert coin, but why would it? We're on a console. This one completely surprised me. It's like it came out of nowhere. I really didn't expect it. And it was at this time when I was playing new games like Metal Gear Solid 2. More 3D based games, because that's why I had the PS2. And arcades were sort of dying, but when I saw this I thought, oh yes, a Street Fighter 2. This will definitely be the arcade versions. So looking around, all seems perfect here. It all seems great. It's the arcade version to me. Let's have a look though. Okay, Ryu vs Dhalsim all good. Versus screen. Any loading times? Yeah. But to be honest, they're not that bad. Literally a few seconds long. This to me wasn't as offensive. It didn't really break the game up, but I did think at the time, why does it need it? Why does an arcade game that now has probably about 10 years plus old, need a loading screen. I didn't know anything about emulation at the time either. I just knew that they've put the arcade games onto a disc. I'm not sure how they did it. We didn't really know anything back then. But there's still loading screens. Yeah, they're shorter, but yeah, why did it need it? To me, this is the definitive edition of Street Fighter 2. Or the collection of Street Fighter 2 games. Warrior, Champion, Turbo. On a physical disc. Something I don't think we're ever really going to get again. Not like this, not the originals, where they've not been tampered with. And as the title suggests, this is a Capcom collection. A collection of all the arcade classics. They didn't really focus solely on this game, or any of the Street Fighters. They wanted to compile a collection of games that people haven't played for years, and put them on one physical disc that I now still own. And that's nice, that's fine. If it was a Street Fighter collection, maybe they would have tried a little harder, but yeah, the loading screens are not that bad. It feels really nice. There's not that sound delay that I was mentioning earlier. But then I did think, if this is the Capcom Classic Collection, with the Street Fighter games on it, where's Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo? Huh? Yeah, well, like most companies, they saved that for Capcom Classic Collections Volume 2. And I think this is a nice collection and everything, but they have Street Fighter 1 on it. Why couldn't they put that on this collection, Capcom Classic Collections, the original one? And where's Super Street Fighter 2? Yeah, we just got Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And like before, they got tips, videos, you can view all the artwork, something I scoured through for ages. They're low resolution on this because HD wasn't really a thing back then. But adding any little extras is welcome to me. I always like going through them because I'm an artist myself, so I like drawing and looking at art. I can always appreciate the level of artwork and detail Capcom have put into these games. But like I said before, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for me wasn't that popular. It was when a lot of people started to stop playing fighting games and Street Fighter. I still played them, but a lot of people were into more 3D games, so it started disappearing. A lot of people liked side-scrollers. And I heard there was very minor changes from Super Street Fighter 2. I mean, Super Street Fighter 2 was just an add-on for Street Fighter 2. It added 4 new characters, so there was that to it, and some new stages and new moves. So you couldn't really convince that many people to pick up another version of the game. And one thing I always loved about these collections is when they had an option of a training mode, because these games were hard and sometimes you hadn't played them for a while. So it was nice to come back and learn your moves and learn how to play the game, see the stages. And what I mean by seeing the stages is most of the time when you were playing it was so hard you never got to take in that detail. Because on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the input reading, you were getting your ass handed to you, so you didn't really get a chance to. But look at this, can you believe it? Look at this. No loading times. Arcade perfect. It feels it. Now I know there's always going to be someone out there, and there always is, that says no, there's a few frames missing and it's a bit more difficult for tournament players. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about playing this game like the arcade. Look at this. I'm getting destroyed like it's nothing. I can't even fight back because I'm crap at this game, and also because it's so difficult. You can lose so quickly, especially against Zangief. He can pull you out of pretty much any move, but with a little trial and error, a bit of patience, a bit of training, you can get better at it. It's not impossible, it's just very difficult. This game was designed to take money, and that's what it was. It was a little business machine. It was there so you would lose a lot, because you had an easy ride on the other Street Fighters. This one, no, not anymore. Well, I have to say, this is a perfect conversion of an arcade game. Just one I wasn't too fond of, but I do like it now. Then out of nowhere, Hyper Street Fighter 2, the Anniversary Edition came out. I was in a game shop in Camden Town looking at new releases, and I saw this was coming out, and I couldn't believe it. I saw the demo cases on display, and I didn't really like the design. I thought maybe it's a demo designer going to change it, but no, they didn't. At the time I was very curious and pre-ordered it instantly and picked it up on their release after work, and I was so excited. The guy behind the counter, because I did manage to pick it up in the Virgin Megastore, was very excited too. He was like, oh god, the nostalgia, man, I can't wait to get home and play this. And just like the home console ports, you could go and change all your settings. You could change how difficult the game is. You could change controller settings. There wasn't a save feature on this game, but that's not a problem. You could go to training. Gallery mode was one of the best things on this collection. One thing about Street Fighter collectors or people that play Street Fighter games is seeing the differences between the older or different versions. And that's what was lovely about this. You could see all of the intros, I mean all of them, for Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, Champion Edition, Hyper Fighting, Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, and last, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Yep, you could see all of the intros. It felt like everything bundled into one. Sure, not all the endings are on here, but that's something you didn't really want in a showcase, because you wanted to earn them endings. Well, I don't know about you, but I did, and I was very surprised by this. And you could even see the end credits. Something that if you'd never seen before was always welcomed, and that music always takes me back. And I remember sitting here before I started for ages going through all of these. I wanted to see them, it was really nice, and I didn't even know what the game was like yet. Do I prefer watching these videos as opposed to looking at all the artwork? Hell yeah I do. It would have been nice if they could have introduced the artwork as well, but oh well. And this came with the Street Fighter 2 anime, my favourite anime, probably the only anime I've ever watched. And it's on this game. I used to watch this film and play the game back in the day on VHS, and to have this all bundled into one game was the best thing ever. Such a great idea. Okay, enough about that. What's the game like? Well, you can select each different version of what the characters are like, so the complete different sprites. So you could have a World Warrior version of Ryu versus a Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo version of Ryu, and he'll have all the different moves, all the updates. And I think I spent most of my time just doing that, just playing as the older versions of each character and seeing all the differences, because that's something I like doing. And it would show you a little logo of each of the characters at the bottom of the screen, depending on which one you were, so you did know. This game ultimately played like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, so it was that with all the different character add-ons, and they did release this in the arcade, something I found out years later. But it was nice to know you are playing a game that was still released in the arcades. Minus the animated movie though. Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is seen as the definitive edition of Street Fighter 2. It was the last version of Street Fighter 2 and the most complete. It packed the most content out of all the games. Well, I agree to that to an extent. Let's give this a go. Is there any loading times? Is it difficult like the Japanese version? Let's have a look. Well, no loading times. And I've gone for the Street Fighter 2 Turbo version of Ryu. And yep, it is still super hard. Put in a bit of practice and it'll mould you into how this game's played. And it doesn't really matter if you've got no credits because it's on free play and it's a home console port of the game. It's a home version of an arcade game. It feels like we've finally done it. We finally got there. And as I said, this was released on the arcade as well. So you are playing an arcade game. I wonder what the concept must have been like when you're walking up to an arcade machine and you see yet another version of Street Fighter 2. What did people say? How did they think? Did they play it? Was it popular? Not too much information's known. I guess I could do a little research, but I'm not gonna. Just something I wondered. Something if I came up to it and thought, oh wow, I didn't know this was coming out. Like I didn't, on the home console, on the PS2. But there you go. Years later, well in 2008, we're all surprised with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. Yeah. That one rolls right off your tongue, doesn't it? It sounds like a joke, the title does. But what this game was the game redrawn. Yeah, redrawn into HD. If they had to put this on a high definition screen, they could have had some of Derek Moore's bezel art and it would have been fine. They could have given us, this time, a complete collection. Street Fighter to Street Fighter Alpha 3. And the rest of them in one collection. But no, they wanted to bring back the classic. And I did like it. I got it again on day of release. But one massive problem. On the PlayStation 3, my console of choice, it was digital only. That really made me angry. But it felt fresh. It was nice to own a new Street Fighter game. And if you didn't like the way it looked, you could change the sprites to the original looking sprites. But the background stayed in HD. And that was a bit odd. I don't know why they just didn't let you change the entire thing. Well, I kind of think of it, there's so many different ports of Street Fighter 2. Just that, Street Fighter 2. I even have this little handheld thing, this little plug and play game, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, that you plug in with batteries, a little tiny Mega Drive, and it plays that with two nice 6-button controllers. Oh, pretty decent. Why am I talking about that? I don't know. But just showing you how many Street Fighters there are. Oh, and I picked up a Nintendo Switch. Mainly for Ultra Street Fighter 2, the final challengers. Final! Is that final? Is it going to be? What's nice about this is you can play it on a handheld, as the handheld mode. It's essentially Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. That's still such a mouthful of a thing to say. But you can play it on a controller on its own and plug it in so it's on the telly. The second you dock it, it's on the big screen, and you can play Arcade Ladder, something that was taken out of Street Fighter 5. Why? Buddy Battle versus online, and I've been playing a lot of online on this, funny enough, and it's quite difficult. I've come across quite some really tough players, but it took me back to the arcades because it's playing people you don't know on Street Fighter 2, something I haven't done for bloody years. Oh, and I won almost every fight minus one, so I'm not doing too bad, and it was really fun. I enjoyed the aspect of it, so I give it props for that. Training, like all of them, it's nice to have it. And Way of the Hado, where you use your Joy-Con controllers to perform Hadoukens, Hurricane Kicks, and Shoryukens. And the gallery with some really beautiful pieces of artwork. Why they couldn't add the anime, the Blu-ray version, I don't know, but it was nice. Color editor, so you can make your own color palette swap this time. Player data, check up on your exact data, how many rounds you've won or lost, and I'm doing quite well. And you can change the graphics to the old style, even the sounds. And this time it's everything, so it's the backgrounds as well as the character sprites. And that's brilliant. When you switch to the original, you get some bezels, again something that Derek Moore should have made, and the sprites. So it takes you right back, minus the little pictures either side and the fonts everywhere. But you can use the little Joy-Cons as a controller each, so you can play two-player. Something reminiscent of, the SNES. Playing with a friend, and that is really nice, something it really takes me back. And I do have this mini arcade machine of Street Fighter 2, something I'm very proud of. It was such an achievement. I always wanted my own arcade machine, something that didn't dominate the house, and now I have one. And it plays every Street Fighter game. So I can't really argue with that. I have everything I've ever wanted in terms of Street Fighter. But this Hyper Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition is my definitive edition of Street Fighter 2. It has everything. And it feels like the complete version. Every time I put that on, I go through such a blast of nostalgia. I could be playing it 1 minute to watching the anime the next. And I'm happy that there's a new Street Fighter on the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully that comes to the PS4 and Xbox One. I like Street Fighter being around. It's something that's been around since I was a little kid, and it's very dear to me. And I'm sure it's very dear to you too. I'm sure this is the last version of Street Fighter that's ever going to come out. I mean, how far can they stretch this? Gaming's very different today than it was. And I still love it. I still love Street Fighter. And I'll play them any given day. I could be sitting down, it's something I could pick up, play, put down and stop playing. It's nice there's so many different versions. Well, that was my definitive edition of Street Fighter 2. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been a while since I've made one because I'm very, very busy. So leave some comments, let me know what you think is your definitive version of Street Fighter 2. Even some memories if you want. Anyway, Alan the Urban Arcade here. I'll see you later. Bye bye.